Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Data Color webinar, Color Accurate Retouching Made Simple, highlights from the Society's convention with Richard West. I'm Boris Bergman from Data Color, and I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. Tonight it will be Richard showing us some interesting thing. Hi, Rich. Are you there? It sounds like.
Hi, Boris. Yeah, I'm indeed in the background, so ready and waiting.
Okay, so please allow me to give you a short overview about the next upcoming, let's say 60 minutes. In a few seconds, I will hand you over to Rich, and he will show us, some of the very interesting things, how to do the work. And after that presentation, we will go into a chat, and you will have the possibility to enter all the questions you have. This webinar will be recorded, so you will also have the possibility to see the recording, and you will get the link for the recording with the follow-up mail you will receive tomorrow or maybe 2 days later. Thank you. Okay, so Rich, it's now your turn, and therefore I will promote you to be the moderator now to be able to share your screen with us. Please do so.
Cool. Thanks, Boris, he says, as strangely enough my presentation's just disappeared. There we go. So, can you see that okay at your end, Boris?
Everything's okay.
Cool, great. Okay. Hi, folks, and welcome to this evening's webinar. So, I'll be taking you through really some of the experiences I took out of the Society's convention this year. So for those of you who aren't aware, the Societies is a group of societies, most predominantly including the Society of Wedding and Portrait Photographers, based here in the UK, but they are also available as a society to join Europe-wide, and probably even further than that. So if you want to find out more about them, have a look at the swpp.co.uk for a website. Basically, every year they have a convention in London, which brings together a whole bunch of extremely talented photographers, and really, pleased to go along and see some of the work. And there is a convention, conference-based convention that runs alongside the more sort of standard trade show, basically, that runs at the same time there. Just happened last weekend, so actually weekend before last now. Gosh, time flies. And really, few things that came out of it from a color management point of view. Key thing for me was really, there is still a lack of some understanding of color management out there within the photographic community. Now, really did see some fantastic work. There's an actual awards ceremony at the convention, and really stunning awards, basically, because all the entries that I saw this year were just amazing. But of course, all those entries, benefited from the fact that they've been well color managed. And definitely talking to some of the attendees at the convention, and there's a lot of people there looking to learn, basically, looking to improve their skill sets. And there was definitely a regular and recurring understanding or misunderstanding of color management. So hopefully tonight we'll bring some of that learning that I had from what people understand at the show to you. The key thing is obviously what we all want to get out of our workflows, our photographic workflows, is a nice little situation like this. We want to be able to say, okay, great, when I take a photograph, I'm going to see in the back of the viewfinder and see visually with my own eyes how that picture is going to be captured. And basically I'm going to get it into my nice retouching environment, and hopefully I won't have to retouch it too much as far as manipulating the image is concerned. But what I might want to do is perhaps crop and just to basically get some of the tonality and some of the colors correct. And then of course what I want to be able to do is to be able to send that out to output. Now that could be like the outputs which we saw printed out at the show. It could be going out to a full color press. It could be going out to a newspaper. It could be going out to the internet. So output, much as I've drawn a little picture of a printer in here, could be numerous different types of things nowadays, including apps. Of course, you could drop your images into apps or basically onto a tablet computer. But what we want to do is have that surety of knowledge that when we're looking at our images, and if we have to retouch them, or when we retouch them, that what we're actually going to output looks as we've expected it to see. Now, the critical stage that people seem to be missing out on, and it's probably most identified by bringing up the topic of print and topic of different types of paper, is that what you're going to need to do is actually find out what end result you're going to be outputting to. Now, it could be different types of paper, for instance. That could make a difference in the way things are going to appear. If you think about perhaps putting an image into a newspaper and putting an image into a magazine, you probably know that the newspaper is going to increase the ink gain. It's going to basically make things fill in, look darker, look more somber, basically, and probably less accurate as well as far as sharpness is concerned, compared to the joys of going onto magazines, or if you're still seeing it on the internet, for instance, on a screen. Then these three different scenarios are going to make that same picture appear differently. Now, what we need to get you to do is to get ahead of the game, to find out what that end result is going to do, what effect that end output is going to have on you. So in this scenario, for instance, and in particular I'm looking at print here because it's the most obvious thing to show a difference, but it could be any form of output as discussed. What we need to do is take that, what was a fairly simple one-step let's retouch process, and add in an extra stage here. So those three displays on the bottom of the screen here are adding in effectively a proofing stage, because that's what we need to do. What we need to do is think, okay, if, for instance, over on the right-hand side there, I'm going to be printing out on some form of stock, maybe it's a parchment stock, maybe it's a fine art stock, whatever it is, if it's some sort of stock or paper that is going to have an effect on our image. Now, obviously, if you are putting an image on a yellow piece of paper, then it's going to have a yellow background to it, basically. What we need to be able to do is get ahead of the game and proof against that. So if it's going to go into a different environment which is going to cause that effect, we need to add in a soft proofing stage there that also allows us to see what that effect is going to be. And if possible, obviously, in some cases, if you are putting onto deep yellow stock, you're actually not going to be able to remove all that. But we do want to be able to adjust that out of the way as much as possible. Now, obviously, more commonly, what we're talking about here is perhaps different types of presses that, we frequently get the comment from photographers that, okay, I look at it on screen and it comes out too dark when I print it, or too light, or maybe too red. This is the sort of adjustments we need to make. We need to soft proof and visually see how things are going to appear, and then be able to actually sort of allow for that, basically. So that's where that adjustment stage comes in there, which allows us to take out as much as possible any imperfections due to the print or output end. Now, in order to do that, you need to find some means of driving the soft proofing. So there's a device that Data Color produces called the SpyderPRINT. So when it comes to printing, this is potentially a solution for you. But let's have a consider of the different types of situations, basically. We want to be able to get from seeing something on screen to be able to see how it's going to proof out, basically, and see what those imperfections are. So let's have a look at some of the technology behind this. We're not going to stay purely in slides all night tonight. I'm going to have a look at various different things. Now, this is a nice little free on the Macintosh utility. I gather there's a similar utility on the Windows platform called Color. This on the Mac is called Color Sync utility, and it's in the utilities folder, in the applications folder, basically. So what it allows us to do is, first of all, for me to be able to show you how different color profiles appear. So for instance, this is the color profile or color gamut of Adobe RGB. Now, this might answer a quick question for a lot of you to start off with, which is frequently, well, should I retouch or take my photos in Adobe RGB, or should I be retouching in sRGB? Well, let's quickly show you what the differences are between Adobe RGB and sRGB. So we're just going to hold the existing color space for comparison. So that's the Adobe RGB side of things. And there's sRGB. You can see the sRGB color space is a lot smaller. It's about a third smaller than Adobe RGB. So instantly what that's telling us is that, okay, we've got less color in sRGB. So what's the ramifications? Well, the ramification is this. You need to find out what colors you can actually see, i.e. what can your displays that you're looking at to retouch in, what can they see? So let's have a look at a profile of my colored display here. In fact, it's on my laptop. Probably not got a particularly recent one. Let's have a look at sometime in November. Now, you would have seen a subtle change there between that color LCD display and sRGB. I'll just pop back between the two. Yep, color LCD, sRGB. So we can see that there's a subtle difference there. Now, that's what that's telling us. It's slightly smaller on the color LCD display there. What that's telling us is, well, okay, I can see a fair proportion of sRGB. In fact, probably about 95%. The Adobe RGB, though, is far bigger. So as far as your retouching is concerned, if you're taking photos in Adobe RGB, great, because it doesn't really matter, or in fact it's preferable to capture in as much colors as possible. But when you go to retouch, try and use the color space you're going to be able to see. Because otherwise, if you start retouching your lighter greens up here, or your yellows, or your deeper reds down here, well, actually you can't see them. So you might as well be retouching with a blindfold on in a dark room and turn the display off, because you are taking a bit of a gamble. Basically, you can start, perhaps doing a landscape scene and trying to enhance the grass and the meadows and so on. And if you start getting into that lighter end of the spectrum, you really don't know what effect that's going to have on your images. So, top tip from me anyway is let's make sure we actually retouch in the environment we're looking at. Now, the other thing we need to consider here is, okay, by the way, if I have, for instance, my ISO display there, well, actually, I've got pretty much 97% of Adobe RGB. So that's a good reason why I should be, in that instance, working in Adobe RGB, because I can see it. And likewise, if I were going out, for instance, on my Wacom tablet, so I've got a Cintiq 24-inch here, and that's a large proportion of the Adobe RGB color space as well. So not just a nice way of working on a Cintiq tablet, but actually a good color space, good color capable machine as well. But the key thing we need to do with all of this is to check where we're going to end up on print, because let's have a look at our print outputs, because this, for instance, is a web-coated press profile, i.e. what we're looking at there, that color space there, the colored piece, is the colors that the press, a standard sort of 4-color press that a magazine would use, for instance. That's what they would use to actually print in. So those are the colors you can see. So you can see it's got a bit more darkness in there. So it's kind of like we were saying about newspaper print, where it will actually fill in that shadow end. This is the shadow end, rather the darker end of the images around this black crosshairs here. That highlights this white crosshairs at the top of our image, basically. But what we're being told is, okay, there's a lot of color that you can't see. And this is instantly telling us that we do need to soft proof. So if I pop into something like, I don't know, Lightroom here, so let's have a look at Lightroom. Let's quickly grab a shot, whatever it may be. Now, out of all those people I surveyed at the show at near Paddington this couple of weeks ago for the SWPP, the societies, lots of people use Lightroom. Lots of people go into the develop module. Lots of people move these sliders on the right-hand side. Very few people had hit the soft proofing button. Now, the soft proofing button is exactly what we're talking about. If we hit the soft proofing button, we can instantly see how our image is going to come out on a particular printer. In fact, if I hit the Y key, I can therefore see a before and after. So you can see there, obviously, this over here on the right-hand side, I can see I've got my Epson 1800 with luster stock profile applied. So that's making that image look darker on the right-hand side than it does on the left-hand side. By the way, hasten to say, folks, I'm no professional photographer. So fortunately, you'll be able to go away tonight thinking, well, at least there's one less threat in the world to my photography business than there was at the start of the evening. So, I am fortunately able to take a camera around and take shots and therefore show you things that have bad effects applied, and that's of course really easy for me therefore to show you how things could be improved for you. Let's have a look at some different profiles though. So I've got a different profile in here. I've got sRGB, so we know that actually that really shouldn't look tremendously different, because pretty much we've got the same style of image there. But what we are going to see is on the Kodak printer. So this is my home photocopier fax machine. what I've chosen to do here is create a profile. We'll come to how to do that in a minute, but essentially what we've done is we've fingerprinted it in the same way that we fingerprinted the Epson printer there to get that profile, that color space we were looking at in the color sync utility, to be able to show you, in this case, apply that to our image and see ahead of time how our image would come out on that particular printer with that particular stock, so in this case plain paper. And this isn't a sparklingly wonderful printer. It's great for photocopying, but it isn't a particularly high quality export printer for images, for not photographic quality images anyway. So I have to say, I'm very useful for what I'm doing for home photocopying, etc., etc. But if I wanted to put a shot in an exhibition, probably not the best printer to be using. But it is good, from my point of view, to be able to show you a profile that has got, well, not a lot of color. And instantly be able to say to you, okay, if you can soft proof, what we're doing is we're giving you the opportunity to check how things are going to print out. Then what we need you to do is to go into your controls, in this case in Lightroom, I'll show you in a second in Photoshop, how to adjust that. We need to go in there and we need to start being able to play around with this, improve our image basically, to be able to try and get it back to how it looked in the first place, hopefully to give a bit more, well, a better image. Now, the key thing with this particular shot, I'm going to be struggling with this, because no matter how much I create as good an end result as I want to here, I know with this particular printer I've got a problem. With the Epson printer there, more professional quality photographic printer, then great. Doesn't take very much to actually adjust that to give it a better end result. Basically, it's going to be more like the original shot, or perhaps just how you would like it to come out as well. Maybe you want that little bit of extra contrast in there. The key thing with this is once you've actually created or adjusted your output image, then pop up into your settings and basically create a new preset and be able to save that so that you can apply it time and time again to your shots. So therefore, okay, I can say, okay, we can now create a correction factor which we can apply onto our images to get as good a result as possible. Good thing with this is we can then batch process. So any shots that are going to go out on that particular output device, we can basically use the output profile for all of those shots. So I said to you, okay, we know ahead of the game here that this Kodak printer isn't going to be great for us. And this is why I'm showing you this color sync utility. Now you get something very similar with Datacolor's Spyder software. It doesn't give the 3D side of things, but it does give you a percentage of sRGB or Adobe RGB reading. So this is really what you need to be able to get your head around. A, to be able to proof to see what your displays can show, but B, how things are going to come out. Because if I pop down here and choose, there is that Kodak C310 plain paper profile. The reason why I said we're never really going to get a great image out of that is that there is, straight away when I look at this curve, there's no shadow detail. And this is absolutely a stage that pretty much everybody I spoke to at the show weren't getting. They weren't getting the idea that, okay, the first thing we need to do is just to be able to see what we can see. Now, this is a free utility, the color sync utility. I'm going to talk to you about how you can create these profiles yourself, but if you're not printing out yourself, a lot of these profiles can just be downloaded from print companies' websites, if you're dealing with a third-party print company or an album company, and then you just need to drop those into your profiles folder and see how they're going to come out, because that gives you that chance to get ahead of the game, because there is no point wasting your time in Lightroom, soft proofing, trying to adjust that Kodak plain paper printer, because ultimately I'm never going to get the shadow detail in there. It's always going to look washed out. So we need to get ahead of the game to do that. Stop wasting your time soft proofing when there is no point. And just so that you see the other option, we're going to have a look at some of this later on, but here's Photoshop, another option here. In the case of Photoshop, we just need to go into our proof setup and basically choose our whatever particular output proof profile we want to use. So in this case, I'm going to choose my custom profile, and there again, straight away, I've actually picked up my Kodak proof profile there. If I click on OK, if I turn on, if I hit my Command Y or Apple Y keys, I can turn that profile on and off. So I can once again see how this particular shot is going to come out on this soft plain paper printer. Actually, in this case, perhaps not so bad because it's more mid-tone rich. There's less shadow detail in there. But ultimately, this is the sort of thing you need to get ahead of. Now, if you're printing yourself, then basically what do we need to do? Well, in fact, let's take it from the other aspect. If you're not printing yourself, this, well, great. We go to a different printing company. Cool. All we need to do is get the profiles for their output. I would suggest you, if that company says to you, don't worry, we're color managed, you should worry. But if they can take your printing, your images and print them out and it comes out correct, great, okay. They're obviously doing a lot of the soft proofing for you. However, far better for you to be able to get those profiles of the printing devices and the stocks and the types of printer basically, and be able to soft proof yourself, because then you can adjust and you can get ahead of the game. Now, if you're in the lovely position of printing out yourself, be that commercially or for competitions, and you want to actually profile your own printers, well, great. We've got a solution for that. It's called the SpyderPRINT from Datacolor. Effectively, it is a device that comes with some software, Mac or PC. You plug that into your computer, you print out a whole bunch of charts like it's got on the screen here, and that gives you the opportunity to read those charts basically, and as you run across the lines of the chart there, it builds up this fingerprint, this profile of how that printer is going to be printing out. So it tells you exactly what you've already seen. In fact, you saw that color space that there was of my Kodak printer there. Exactly what I've done here was do this calibration process, and you get a range of different types of charts, so you can get more accurate depending on how important it is to you and the sort of quality level of printer you've got, but basically it's giving you that understanding of how things print out. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a more of an understanding of, well, one of the biggest things that, as I say, it kind of surprised me. Few people had come to terms with the idea of soft proofing. A lot of people were using color profiles. A lot of people were doing things that were, looking at color profiles and getting them into their machines, but then they didn't actually do anything with them. And likewise, there was also a bit of a dearth of anybody even knowing about the soft proofing button in Lightroom in the develop module there. But of course, all that is somewhat at the end of the process. This is what we want to be able to do, that soft proofing ability there. What tends to happen upstream of that can cause some issues is if we haven't actually got a display that we can trust. In this scenario, for instance, I've got that same scenario of the same screen over a period of time. Effectively what we're doing here is we're capturing the image, and at stage 3, right at the start there, on my Cintiq and on my display there, I've got 2 different color casts on my image. Now I'm making it obviously fairly broad brush effects here, but effectively what I'm saying is, well, there's something affecting the way my image is looking, and it's not the actual image, it's actually the screens I'm looking at. But of course, if I haven't calibrated my screens, by which I mean if I haven't used a device that actually looks at and builds the profile of that display and corrects it to put that display or those displays into an internationally accepted standard of color, that's what a color calibration device does, then basically I'm again looking at a screen that I can't trust. And so in this scenario, for instance, at stage 3, I've obviously decided, okay, I trust that my image was green, or at least that's the way it's going to be looking at the moment. So, ooh, heck, I didn't want it to be green. I know it was sort of grayish originally. I'll retouch it back until I get to stage 5. And the trouble is, that means at stage 6 and 7, it's coming out sort of orangey ready because I've removed green out of my image. So how do we get back to this scenario, this ability to trust everything that we're seeing over time? Okay, well, when it comes to those displays, we have to take into account that there are lots of different ones as well. So you can't just buy all the same display and say, job done, there we are. Because all of us nowadays are getting more and more displays all the time. You probably, like me, are showing images to people on tablet computers and even on phones. And certainly if you're investing money in things like a Cintiq, there may be fantastic quality displays, but they may not be absolutely truly calibrated. So you need to calibrate them. And even if you do go to the extent of buying all the same displays, different batches, or different ages of displays will cause images to look differently. So you need to be calibrating. That's where a Spyder comes in. So, it's synonymous with color management, the Spyder basically. So the Spyder is a USB-based device. There it is on the left of the screen, connecting or resting on a display. You don't actually have to hold it against the display, but I suppose we're trying to give it a bit of a size scenario here, so allow you to see what sort of size it is. Effectively, we're talking about a device that does a similar sort of process to the SpyderPRINT, but for transmissive color, i.e. for anything that's actually creating its own light source, like a display, like a projector, like a tablet computer. Then the Spyder comes with software that allows you to, well, comes with a bunch of eyes, sensors in there and filters that allow you to read that color, but the software allows you to compare that to how it should look in that internationally calibrated environment. And therefore, not only does it build up that profile, that fingerprint of how that display displays color, but at the end of the process, when you hit the save button, it actually corrects it as well. So it gets your displays, as much as they're able to be, into that internationally standardized environment. So looking at two similar sRGB based displays, for instance, you'll get a very, very, very close image between the two. All of them, they'll look the same basically to all intents and purposes on those two images. I'm being slightly reserved on that because of course there is the issue of different types of display and different color capabilities. So for instance, an Adobe RGB capable display like my ISO display will still see more color than an sRGB based display. So they won't be exactly the same. Well, not off the bat. If you go for one of the Datacolor top models, you could actually force them to be the same, but of course what that will do is it will actually reduce the amount of colors on that Adobe RGB based display, because it's trying to get both of them looking exactly the same, so therefore it's going to go to the lowest common denominator. So within the photography world, usually best practice is to say, all right, choose whichever is your best display and calibrate that in particular, but also calibrate those other displays, but just bear in mind that your best display will probably have a little bit more color to it than your other displays will. But key thing about the Spyder here is, as I say, it's picking up on any of these transmissive colors. The way it works basically is very similar to that SpyderPRINT. It's flashing a whole bunch of known color swatches in front of the eye of the device, which is obviously pointing at the screen. The difference between this and the SpyderPRINT, they're not the same device. The SpyderPRINT has a calibrated light source in it. It bounces that calibrated light off of your printed out samples that are printed out on every stock and on every printer that you've got, and it reads it back. So therefore that's actually a reflective light source or a reflective process. This is transmissive, i.e. you don't need a light source in the Spyder. The Spyder in this case is just reading the light from whatever device, whatever display you're looking at basically. As a result, the Spyder is a lot more cost effective, shall we say, although the SpyderPRINT itself is actually not as expensive as our more commercial or manufacturing based models, which have movable flatbeds and so on. In the case of the SpyderPRINT, you actually move the device yourself to read the colors. So a bit more manual, but as a result not as expensive as the high-end devices out there that we do. So just to give you a quick synopsis, there's three different types of Spyder. For those of you who are looking at more sort of entry level, you're doing this as a hobby, you're only ever going to have one display, and that's the case if you just want it to look correct on that display. Then great, Spyder Express is for you. For the more professional out there, the Pro and the Elite are the top range devices. The Pro's the middle range, I suppose, would be the expression. But to be honest, usually is the case of being the most popular with photographers. The Elite is more aimed at design studios where you can match multiple displays and force them to adopt the same profile, as I say. But with the Pro, it's actually the same physical device as the Elite, but you've got all the software or the firmware turned on in the Elite, basically. Both of them come with an ambient light sensor, which is important because you do need to make sure you're in a good, stable lighting condition to do any retouching. There really is no point in you, at the start of the day, retouching next to a big, bright, open window, and at the end of the night, expecting your display, or for that matter your eyes, to see things the same, basically. Because, of course, at the start of the day, your colors will look washed out, your display will look a bit dark. At night, the sun's gone down, no light coming in through that window, and suddenly, basically, it's not quite the same scenario, is it? Everything looks too bright, too colorful. So try and keep your retouching in a nice, static environment. Don't sit there, for instance, in a big bright red t-shirt or a blue t-shirt, because that will of course affect things as well. You'll see reflections of light and color, and that will affect the way, again, you're perceiving things. But as I say, Pro tends to be the device a lot of photographers go to. It's essentially allows you to do multiple displays on the same machine as well. So therefore I could, for instance, do the scenario I was showing you just now with my computer driving my laptop driving my Wacom tablet and an ISO display as well. The Elite would allow us to do, as I say, more devices. Also does things like multi-point sampling. So it really is the top of the range device. You can always upgrade to the Elite from the Pro if needs be as well. So if you decide to go for the Pro. But hopefully that's given you a bit of an understanding of really the things that came to hand a lot at the convention we were at with a lot of the photographers there. That there was not this understanding of soft proofing. And of course there is no point in soft proofing if you're soft proofing on a screen that you can't trust. Now, what about the rest of the workflow, as it were? Well, of course, it'd be really good, wouldn't it, to be able to always know what we're taking photographs of, always have a frame of reference. And this is where people in the past have used things like grey cards. So let's, for instance, take this example here. I've got a bunch of leaves on a yellow background. Well, that's what it looks like on my display at the moment. It may look like something different entirely on yours. It may be, a bunch of lime green leaves on a white background. But that's the thing. All of us could be seeing this differently. And more to the point, I don't really know how I captured this in the first place because I don't have that frame of reference. So that's where we came in with grey cards, but now we've superseded that with something called a cube, or the Spyder cube, basically. So again, let's pop out of our slideware here, so we're not just showing you a bunch of slideware. Let's actually go and find an image of the cube which I've shot against these very same leaves, in fact. Because what we've got here, quite obviously, for those of you who can see histograms and recognize a histogram, it's up in the top right hand corner there, it's that little graph, and from that we can read that okay, this is an overexposed shot. We can also see that because I've turned on my out of gamut warnings. So we can see here, great, that little red thing that I'm turning on and off on the image here is because I'm picking up this, or hitting this white triangle in the top right hand corner of my histogram. Now I've actually turned on my black point, or my out of gamut warning, for the shadow end, i.e. for anything that's over 100% or over 0% dots, basically, under 0% dots, I should say, so over 100% black, if you like. But of course, we haven't got anything. We can see that from the histogram. All the information here in this image is over on the right-hand side of our little graph. So that's telling me this is a very overexposed image. So that's, of course, something we probably want to do if we're shooting in RAW, because shoot in RAW, shoot overexpose, capture more image, and also by doing that, by overexposing and then toning down afterwards, you can lose some of that noise that you would otherwise potentially get in those darker areas of your shot. But of course what we want to do now is to be able to take this image and any other image taken at the same time in the same conditions and get the exposure back to the correct levels and get the colors back to the correct levels as well, don't we? We want to know whether there was a cast in here or not. So how do we address this? Well, 3 easy stages, and that's exactly what the cube is for. The cube is there to give us a frame of reference. Believe it or not, this side with the sort of the red reminder on the moment and a sort of slightly grey triangle above it is exactly the same as the side on its right here, which has got again a sort of grey beigey triangle and a white one underneath it. Both those are exactly the same. It's just the lighting conditions that we're seeing here that's affecting that. And actually that's telling us straight away a good thing, because we need to know where our lighting is coming in from. Because what we should do with any sort of frame of reference card like this, where we're setting the grey levels and setting the contrast levels, is get that lighting coming in from 45 degrees roughly to our target. So we know here, because this is cubic, it may look sort of hexagonal at the moment on your screens, but it is actually a cube. This is where I've got the cursor over at the moment is the point that's pointing towards us, the corner that's pointing towards us. Basically, we know that the lighting is coming in from the left-hand side because that's obviously the more overexposed side of this image. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that to set our grey point. We also then have some frames of reference because we know this is a 19 or 18% grey at the top here. We know that the white triangles, albeit not looking the same at the moment, are both 96% white. And we know that around this black dot, which is actually a hole, this is a 4% black. So we know we've got a very overexposed shot here. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to, first of all, set our white point. So we're going to go up here. I'm using Camera Raw here within Photoshop, but I could be using Lightroom, various other different products. I just wanted to show you a couple of different options because we're going to show you Lightroom with something else in a minute. But basically, what I'm going to do straight away is take that white, that effect, that color cast out there by using that white balance tool. So we'll just undo that so you can see that again. So you can see quite a yellow tinge to this really. So we did have more standardized green leaves on a white background really. So instantly you see we've taken out that color fault from our image. But now we know we've got an overexposed image. We just need to get our exposure right as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop our exposure slider down just until that hits underneath 100% there. As soon as that white triangle there has disappeared underneath 100%, that outer gamma warning's turned off, we know that we've probably got about 96%, so we're just under 100%, so it's going to be about 96% in that white reading there. We've still got a little bit of red up here in this ball. Now this ball is actually, we call it a scintillation ball, but essentially it's a chrome ball, and it's there to give you a frame of reference on your little cube here, your guide, what is essentially a three-dimensional grey card. It's giving you a guide that is, okay, you can have 100% here, because this is chrome. This is where you get that ping of light on any bumpers, etc., etc., and that's what we're looking at here. Sort of converse of that is this black dot, this hole, as I mentioned. This is a relative 0 point. We should have 100% black or 0% dots in this hole here. So in order to get that correct, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the blacks down. So the black slider drops down here. As soon as we've got that filled, we've gone a bit too far. As soon as we've got that filled, basically, we know that we've now got 100% black in our hole. We've got, therefore, just over 100%, I mean, we could read it, but it's about 4% black around the hole, which is exactly what we need it to be. So what we've done is we've used our scale here. We know what these values should be, and because we know what they should be, we've therefore been able to set our exposure level, our contrast, differences between the highlight and the shadow end, and take that color cast out. Now in doing that, all we need to do basically is essentially go into our little drop down menu here and save that setting. Now if we save it and call it, I don't know, Cal Tuesday, and hit save, what that means is if I pop into that menu again, if any other images I open up and want to apply this to, I can apply a preset, and there we go. We've created Cal Tuesday in there. I've got a whole bunch of other ones in there, but basically it's giving us that opportunity to apply the same settings, the same correction of our image data, of our exposure, to all the shots in that scenario. Because what we're doing here, effectively, is we're getting ahead of the game. We're getting into the situation where we can actually get the colors right, the lighting right, capture the colors correctly at the start of the workflow. So when we take it into retouch, on a color-capable and calibrated display, we know that we're already starting ahead of the game. We're not having to guess what those colors were. And we're seeing them when we retouch them and able to work on them, knowing that we came from the correct starting point. But of course, key thing with this is this fits into a range of different tools that are out there. So the cube is essentially, as I say, a three-dimensional grey card. Has that benefit that it's actually about, I don't know, 4 centimeters or 2 inches along a side, so it's very pocketable. And as you saw there, you can hang it, or the base of it there is actually flat. It's actually got a tripod mount in there, so you can actually mount this as well onto a tripod or a lighting stand. So therefore, you can easily pop this into your photo shoots, irrespective of where you are. Should be able to use it. So big benefit over standard grey cards, really, because very unlikely to blow away. It's nice and solid and robust. It's scratch resistant, which is all good stuff. But basically, it's also got that advantage. It's not a flat card. So with a flat card, you need to get that spot on, well, not spot on, but around 45 degrees to the light. Whereas this, because you've got those two sides, you know that you can actually know one of them is going to be roughly 45 degrees to the light, as long as you've got the little hole pointing towards you. So that's giving you a good frame of reference. But what happens for those of us who have to get colors absolutely correct? What if you are shooting, as in this instance, a wedding, or sports photography, or pack photography, or product photography, and you've got to get those colors correct? In the case of a wedding, you really want to get the bride's dress correct, the groom's suit correct, the bridesmaids' dresses correct. You need to get the colors correct, and more importantly, you need to have consistency, don't you? Because what you don't want is, as in this instance, some shots inside in some lighting conditions looking different from shots outside, looking different from shots in the church, for instance. So when you're getting different lighting conditions, you need really to find some way of basically taking that difference, that differentiator out, and also get those colors spot on. So you could use the cube, but if we want to get to that real sort of that complete control of the color, we actually have a different tool in the form of something called the SpyderCHECKR. Now this is a gray card, gray card and a color card all in one. You can see here it's probably about the size of a tablet computer. But it folds open, as you can see. It's actually got two halves there, so it actually shuts. It's a clamshell approach, so it shuts and closes. So it would actually be about the size of a tablet computer, but in this case we've got it open. It is tripod mountable, so you don't actually have to have anybody holding it. So again, you could just pop that onto a tripod or a lighting mount. But it's a good, really accurate means of getting your colors correct, because what you've got here is 48 colors and gray tones that allow you to really set your color curve of your, and conditions basically, of your photography. So let's show you how you can use this. And again, apologies, you're going to see some of my lousy photography, but it gives us the opportunity really to sort of see what sort of effect. We're going to turn off soft proofing. We're going to turn off that split screen there. We're just going to look at some shots here. Now, again, don't worry, I'm not a real photographer. You guys have no threats here. But what we have got is some of my relatives being taken in lots of different lighting conditions at a wedding, basically. So, you know, you can tell that they look different in my shots, and if I didn't do something about the retouching, I may never get those colors correct. I could sort of guess what was right, but who knows? Maybe they are all wearing pinky shirts. Who can say? Maybe they are all that sunburnt, basically. We need to get this correct. So what we need to do in each lighting condition is shoot our SpyderCHECKR. Now we need to do that and basically be able to calibrate for that environment. And the reason why it's quite big is because what we actually need to do is what I've already done here, is shoot it and then crop it down. Because you can't just zoom in and just shoot your color chart, because it will give a false reading. Your camera will be metering for just the color chart. So you need to shoot your color chart in effectively the area that you're going to be shooting your shots in. So if you're doing a group scene, pop it in there, and you know it should be probably as small as 1/10 of the size of the frame, basically. But then after that, once you've done that photograph, don't forget you're not going to have to worry about this at the time, at the event you're at, but basically in post-processing, as long as you've taken one shot of your SpyderCHECKR in each lighting condition, you can then later on crop down. And this comes with software, so you can quickly use the software to create that correction factor, that preset basically, which you can apply to any image taken in that lighting conditions. And this is why, to be perfectly honest, Lightroom's a great tool for using this in, because it's so easy to batch process in Lightroom compared to things like Camera Raw and so on, where it can be more of a laborious process in Photoshop and so on, where you do need to effectively start creating actions. Here, it's just all down the bottom here. I can choose a group of shots and apply it. But let's show you how to do this. Now, it's going to seem fairly similar to start off with. We're going to start off with this particular shot. We're going to take a white balance out of this. So we're going to just click on one of the grey squares there, and you can see, perhaps just see that subtle change in the histogram there. It's taken out a slight color cast. We're then going to, and this will sound familiar again, check our white square here. This particular white square I know is a 96% white. Now if I look on the right hand side underneath the histogram, you'll see it says RGB and it says 96.1, 96.2, 96.2. Now what that's telling us is, on average, it's about 96%. That's square. That's what it should be, pretty much. If it weren't, we do what we did with our previous example, and that's adjust the exposure, which is what we're setting here, using the exposure slider. Now obviously in this instance I didn't overexpose. Down here, we're now going to check our black square down the bottom here. Now this is a 4% black. Now strangely enough, go back to those readings underneath the histogram up in the top right hand corner there. 5.5, 4.5, 6, maybe a little bit high, so what we're going to do is just drop that just a shade perhaps, just a little bit down. So we get that just a little bit lower. And yeah, now we've got more nearer to an average of 4, so we'll say go with that. That's all we need to do as far as us knowing any of the values on here. You don't have to go now around with a color picker and choose every other one of these squares, read it, and change sliders until the readings are correct, and then eventually save a correction factor on the left-hand side here. Basically, there's a software that comes with the Spyder. It's called the SpyderCHECKR app. It runs Mac or PC, and it plugs into Lightroom, most importantly, but also into Camera Raw, into Hasselblad Focus. And what it allows us to do is basically open up that particular shot and let the software automatically read all of those 48 squares and the color values of it for you. Now, basically, as you saw, it quickly checked for any updates, and now it's giving us a question of, well, do you want a 24 or a 48 patch target? So we actually have a smaller version of the SpyderCHECKR, which is only 24 targets, called the SpyderCHECKR 24, strangely enough. But basically, we've used the 48 because it's more accurate and also more robust than 24. And effectively, what we've done is we've got the picture in the background there. If I move the sample points out of the way, there's the picture that we've taken and cropped. And these that are moving across now, these sample points, these little squares, the smaller squares, are the sample points of where the software will read the color patches behind it. So all we're doing here is giving you the opportunity just to make sure that those, in case you haven't shot that target square on, just to make sure that those sample points are in this relevant square, basically. They are color-coded, but pretty much that's only an example color, and it really is just to make sure that in case you've shot the target upside down, you'll easily spot the difference. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, let's just quickly save the calibration. We're going to pop it back into Lightroom, and we're going to call that Tuesday late, and we're going to say click, and that's it. I've now created a preset over here on the left-hand side. If I scroll down here, you can see I've been doing that show recently. Under my user presets, I've got quite a lot of them. I need to actually go and perhaps archive some of these off, or remove some of them. And basically in there, well, I'm not actually seeing Tuesday late, am I? And that's because a little nuance of Lightroom, if you've not used it with any plugins before, with Lightroom you just need to quit and restart for the cache to refresh and it to see any new plugin presets, basically. So, what the heck, let's just quickly do that. We'll skip the backup this time, and we'll just quickly pop Lightroom back open again. There we go. So, pop it open, and then you'll see that preset pop open into our little user presets there, basically. So, boom. So, if I go down to user presets again, just down the bottom here, and there is Tuesday late. So if I click on that and you look at the color chart, you should be able to see a subtle change. I'll just undo that. It's obviously wasn't one of the more pronounced lighting conditions at the wedding this. You're seeing a subtle change in the reds there. But let's choose, in true Valerie Singleton or other similar style fashion, those pre-done shots here that I've got that have got obviously quite serious lighting condition in problems on there. You can tell I'm not a very good photographer. He isn't even in focus, is he? So, but what I've done is, and one of the benefits of creating these presets over here in the preset folder, I actually group them together, which means A, they're a lot easier to find and search out, but B, you can also archive these off. You can export these and archive them off with the photographs. So, great way of keeping all your images and the relevant corrections together. So this is in the church, so let's correct that in the church shot. A bit of a color cast there we've instantly removed. This is outside the church, so let's go for an outside the church correction. Great, okay, so we're now bringing that down, so we actually can now see that they've got grey and pink shirts. There was a combination effect. And then the last shot, obviously this very, very coloured shot inside the reception, so let's actually take that out, and again, straight. We've now gone from this hodgepodge of colours to complete control of our colour, where the same shirts are the same colour, the same skin tones are the same colour, the same end result. Again, young gentleman on the right hand side there, still with his eyes closed, can't win everything, can you? But of course in Photoshop you could then take that into Photoshop and retouch that with another shot. But of course only worth doing that once you've actually made sure you've applied the same colour correction to both shots to actually get one you can paint into the other and not look like somebody's being painted in from an entirely different colour lighting condition. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a whirlwind tour of the different types of color calibration capability there are out there. As I mentioned, the SpyderCHECKR, it's it's a sizable device, but it needs to be, because if you're doing group shots, as I say, you need to take the same frame size, the same size of subject as you would be doing when there's a group there. You don't actually have to shoot the SpyderCHECKR at the same time as the shots. You can do it before or after, or just when there's a quiet moment during the day. But as long as you capture it in the lighting conditions, you're ahead of the game. You've got this control and capability. It actually it pops open as it's seeing here. You've got little pop-out cards basically. So they're replaceable cards, and there is a fade checker there basically, which allows you to check basically if the cards have faded. I mean, the one I've got has lasted for a good 3 or 4 years. Hasn't faded yet, but at least it's there to check in case you do need to change that. And so you get 2 different types of cards in the full-blown SpyderCHECKR. It's a solid, nice solid plastic container. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner there in its closed form compared to the size of the Spyder cube there. And also on the back of the cards, you've actually got a grey card in itself. So, but the same thing applies with this as I mentioned to other cards. You need to, for setting grey balance and contrast, you need to shoot it at 45 degrees to the light. So what you can actually do is there's a pop-up spindle on the top of the SpyderCHECKR, which allows you to mount your cube, your Spyder cube onto that. So you can actually use those in conjunction. So you can shoot your card straight onto you, so it's nice and easy and full frame, or rather square onto the frame. And you can use the cube to set that grey balance and contrast at the start of the process. And as mentioned, there is a smaller version, a little baby version of SpyderCHECKR 24, but isn't the same sort of nice solid device with the double the number of colour patches in there that you get with the SpyderCHECKR itself. But it does come at a more affordable price. Now, for those of you who are getting into video, you should be aware that the same SpyderCHECKRs can be used to calibrate video as well. And actually there's a bundle which could save you some money. So if you wanted to get, for instance, a screen calibrator plus a SpyderCHECKR plus a Spyder cube, which can be used for obviously stills photography and calibration, but also for capturing video and calibrating video. And also comes with a whole bunch of CDs and discs, basically, DVDs basically, to allow you to calibrate video screens. And then we do a Spyder HD bundle, and normally, as I say, it comes in a nice solid case as well. Normally comes in around 332 euros. We'll come to how you can get some discounts on all this very shortly, because we've got some discounts for you if you basically open until the end of the month for those people who have come through the Society's show or just couldn't quite make it. There's also a nice bundle we do which has got the cube, a Spyder Elite and a SpyderPRINT in there. It's called the Spyder Studio. So if you don't want to be doing your full-blown calibration all the way to print, then you can actually get this nice equivalent boxed set, basically. Again, saving you about £100 off of the price. List price here is about £446. I've converted this one to pounds, but no, would be the list price for all the individual elements. But the saving there is about £100 on the studio cost. But as mentioned, show promotions as opposed to 446. If you go to the website I'm about to give you the details of, which is down the bottom there, the swpp.co.uk/secure/datacolor.html, or sorry, HTM, and it's not a www, it's an HTTPS at the start there. Then there's a whole bunch of pricing for what the prices basically shows special prices we set up for people attending the Society's convention. And as a thank you to the Societies, we've continued that pricing until the end of the month. So go to that website and you are able to purchase at the show specials. So for instance there, the Spyder cube coming in about £10 off. As mentioned, the Spyder HD bundle coming in at about £70 off there, and I think it's about £35 off the cost of any of the other Spyders there. Now, if, for instance, you missed out on the opportunity, or you've seen here that you need to have perhaps Lightroom or Photoshop, if you've not actually done it already, if you go and sign up for the Creative Cloud, it's going to cost you, for the Photographer's bundle, which includes Lightroom and Photoshop, £8.78 a month, or £104.86 per year. However, if you go to that URL at the bottom there, as soon as you've bought any data color based kit between just before Christmas and or before in December and up to the end of February, if you buy any data color kit, excluding the cube, I think it is, and the SpyderCHECKR 24. So pretty much everything else. You can get a promotional code which will give you 15% off the monthly or the yearly subscription cost for the Creative Cloud. So as a special thank you to Adobe there for offering or working with us on that. But basically, we're trying to give you the opportunity to get up to speed with the latest iterations of the Creative Cloud bundle, and basically get a bit of a discount in return for also getting yourself color managed as well. So hopefully that's a good benefit. Go to that URL there, and that will give you the details of how to get that promotional code basically. So datacolor.com/promotion-adobe-en. That's of course if you're in Europe. Now, lastly, if you don't get into the SWPP promotional exhibition site, it's only while stocks last. So unfortunately, there is a limited amount of stock, that's a limited amount of offerings that are going to be in that promotional price. You can go to our standard web store. It's in euros. It's a European-based site, but you can purchase from the UK, for instance, and pop in at the checkout the code BPPA 0514, and that gives you a 20% discount off our standard promotional prices. So it's actually not far off the promotional prices we did for the societies for the show, but it's a members only benefit there basically. So another benefit for you. Now, that's it from me, really, folks. I'm going to wrap up by saying if you need any further information on how to use any of the kit or tips and tricks on color management we've been talking about tonight, you can get 93 pages of exciting detail. It's available in German, as you can see, but it's also available in English and other languages. If you go to the URL down the bottom there, that gives you the English version of that little downloadable ebook. So it's an ebook, not a physically printed book. You can also go and check out our YouTube videos, because there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that gives you tips and tricks on the joys of how to use any of our kit or get tips and tricks on color management. Or go to our blog if you want to give us some feedback, please, folks. There's a range of different blog details there. Lastly, if you've got any questions that in a few minutes when we open up the chat, or rather the questions window for you to type in any questions, so don't worry, we're not going to turn the microphones on you. If you don't get your questions answered tonight, then basically please go to either the ticketing system there, or go to that free phone number. That, folks, it's 8 o'clock. Let me remind you of our Adobe promotional 15% discount promotion going on at the moment, and say to you, thank you kindly for your time. We've done our hour. That's the webinar. Any questions? Let's open it up to the microphones now and say thank you for your attendance. Cheers. Okay, Boris, so we're going to open it up to our audience.